friends, Heidi here from Rain Country Homestead. God is good all the time. And for dinner tonight, I am making almond fried chicken, and this is my own recipe. Now, what I am using is the chicken broth and the chicken from the one that I roasted in the solar oven the other day. And you can find a video to that right up here. So I'm starting with cooked chicken. Traditionally, almond fried chicken is made using raw chicken pieces. However, I have found for several reasons I prefer using the cooked chicken. And one is that it seems to just turn out more tender. I don't have to worry about whether or not it gets cooked all the way through. And plus, it's just another thing I can do with the leftover chicken that I've roasted, whether it be on the wood stove or in my solar oven. So let's get to this and I'll show you how I do it. What I have here is 2 cups of the broth from the chicken I roasted, and if you can see those little pieces floating in there, I added about a tablespoon or more of chia seed and flax seed, mostly for the sake of the health benefits, and I just kind of let them soak in there for a few minutes. And also because it will help this thicken up the sauce. So this is what we're starting with, is the sauce itself. And so I'm going to pour this in here in my pan. And now I'm going to add another 2 cups of filtered rainwater. You can find a link to where I buy my Berkey filters, where I think it's the best price that I've seen personally anyway. And that's in a link below. So I want to get this so I have about 4 cups total of broth. Now, even though it's pretty much just the 2 of us eating off this, I still like to make a lot of broth because the gravy, the almond gravy, is so good just over the rice on its own. Now to this, what I have here is my organic tapioca starch. You can find a link to where I get this below. Another one you can use is the arrowroot powder. I just highly recommend that you stay away from cornstarch unless you know it is non-GMO and organic. So these lids that are about this size that fit your wide mouth jars are going to be a 1/2 cup. What you're going to need is, so I always like to use the lids for measurements because they're handy, they're already there. And about a 1/4 cup is all you need. So I just fill my lid up about halfway. And that's going to be plenty, especially with the seed in there already. And so you just want to blend that really well. Make sure there's no chunks left in there. And it's usually pretty simple. You can see that. It's nicely blended. Now, really what you need to add to this for a really good flavor is green onions, especially fresh green onions, and you'll put that in later. However, I never seem to have green onions on hand when I'm doing stuff like this. I always forget to keep them on hand because they rot too quickly, and so I don't stock up on them like I would regular onion that will last for a long time in the fridge. So what I'm going to do is put in a bunch of dehydrated onion. That's about a 1/4 cup. But it is much better with your green onion, so I recommend you do that. My old recipe called for soy sauce, which eventually I switched to the Bragg's liquid aminos, which I'll still use until they're gone. But I discovered the coconut aminos thanks to one of my followers, and I'm going to use these in here since we're trying to get away from soy products. And if you're using soy sauce, you're going to do 2 tablespoons. I got 2 bottles out because I wasn't sure how much was left in here. So I've got 2 tablespoons. Now, normally I would not add salt. I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of this bottle because there's not much left. Okay. But since the coconut aminos aren't near as salty as your soy sauce, I'm going to go ahead and put in about a teaspoon of salt. This is the pink Himalayan salt. Okay, and then about a tablespoon of granulated garlic. You can also use fresh garlic. Granulated garlic is just handy for me. I still have a lot of my fermented garlic that I should have chopped up and put in here. And then everything else is definitely going to be, or actually, you'll want some sesame oil, a at least a tablespoon of that because you're going to really want that good sesame flavor in there. You can also add sesame seeds to this if you choose. Okay, so the sesame oil is for the flavor. Now, next things are options. For me, I'm always adding my mixed greens blend to pretty much everything I cook. So this I add in here for the sake of the health benefits. And I talk about these in almost every cooking video I do, especially anything that's dinner related. And this has just all kinds of goodness in it, from dandelion leaves to radicchio, kale to beet greens, strawberry leaves and grape leaves and stinging nettle. It's just a whole bunch of different greens in there, and it's just a way we can get a little bit more nutrition into our diet. So again, a matter of taste, but choice, but it's just a really good way to sneak this stuff into your foods. If you don't like the taste of some of the stuff, once it's dehydrated, the taste is definitely more mild. Like say dandelion leaves can be bitter, but it's dehydrated, you can't even taste it. Obviously, if you get too much, you can taste it, but you can see how much I added, sort of see what that looks like. And you really don't even notice the flavor. I put it in my pot pies and all my sauces, pretty much everything. And now, normally I'd put in about a tablespoon of red pepper flakes, but since I'm using this really great pepper that I'm hooked on now that I got from one of my subscribers, homegrown peppers, let's see all that red and green, and you got to go a little lighter on this. It's very spicy, but I'm addicted to this stuff. I'm loving it so much, and I'm so grateful. What a wonderful gift. And because it's so spicy, the nice thing is it'll last me, it'll go a lot farther than red pepper flakes. So that's pretty cool too. So that was probably about a teaspoon of that, I'm guessing. Now, another thing I will add when this is cooked and good and thick is a cup of, you can use slivered or sliced almonds. I like to wait until towards the end because I don't like to overcook the almonds. I want to keep them as raw as possible. Mostly, I just add them to heat through so they can get warm. So what I'm going to do is I can use either my hot plate or my wood stove. I have a fire going right now, and it's kind of a dreary day. We're getting enough solar I could do this, but I'm just going to go ahead and put this on the wood stove and let it start thickening up. So I'll be right back. Now we're going to get on to making the batter for the chicken. So what I have in here is just a little better, because I always like to be generous, than a tablespoon of baking powder. I'm not going to be adding salt to this, so just keep that in mind. Now I'm going to be using, again, my tapioca starch. Again, arrowroot powder will also work. And I'm using a whole cup. That kind of got... You have to kind of watch this stuff because it sort of sticks. I realize after I poured that in there, but that's still good. A cup of the starch, whether it be arrowroot powder or tapioca, and then 1 cup of rice flour. Now you can use regular white flour if you want. I prefer to use rice flour, and plus this will make it a gluten-free recipe for those of you who cannot have gluten. So the whole thing will then be gluten-free, which is pretty cool. I don't worry a whole lot about the gluten. I try to kind of cut back on gluten and just grains in general. But it's just always nice to know there's so many great ways to do something gluten-free. Now, next I'm going to use 3 eggs. So I'm going to make a little well in here, a little, and crack my eggs in there. Yes, I know I should be cracking them into that measuring cup first, just in case there's one bad one. I'm always so lazy when it comes to that. Then there'll be that one time, just that one rare time, and then you gotta throw everything out. And I'm gonna just beat these a little bit, just in that well. And then what you're gonna wanna do, in fact, I'm gonna put some water in this measuring cup here, and you're gonna start with about a tablespoon at a time of water and just start kind of blending it in to your flour mixture, your dry ingredients. And just kind of add the water as you think you need it. You just kind of decide how thick you want it. So now I'm going to finish blending this in and see how thick this is turning out. Typically you're going to need about 1/4 cup to 1/3 cup, possibly more. It also just depends on how thick you want it. You want it thick enough that it's going to coat your chicken really well. So I definitely need more. It's probably going to be more like 1/2 cup of water. I never can remember. It says, I wrote down in my recipe book like, you know, a couple tablespoons, but I know I always use a lot more than that, but I never remember until I start doing it. So you can see that's still very, very thick. Pour the rest out in there, and I'm thinking I'll probably still want some more water in there. You can tell that kind of, that starchy look to it. Remember that some of you people that are my age may remember that the homemade gack, I think it was called, and it was made basically with just cornstarch and water. It was just really fun for the kids. Is it gack? Am I thinking? No, not gack. Oobleck. Gack was another thing you made with white glue and borax, believe it or not. I used to actually make that for my boys. That was the more modern version of the slime that we had when we were kids. So those of you who are in your 50s-ish might remember slime. It came in a garbage can, a little plastic garbage can. This stuff was so cool. Oh, the fun things we did with that. I'm sure our parents just loved it. Apparently I loved it enough that I found a recipe and started making it for my own kids. I don't think my siblings and siblings-in-law were too happy when I made it for their kids. Okay, so that's a fairly good consistency right there. I could go just a little bit thinner, but I think I'm going to leave that for now. I think I'm kind of liking this. I always just kind of play with it and do it a little bit different every time. Again, you want it thick enough that it's going to stick to your chicken. Now, I'm going to show you my lazy way of doing this. But first, I got to clean this mess up. Alright, so when I say lazy, it's just because what I like to do is take my pre-cooked pieces of chicken, and if they're bigger pieces like this, and I'll throw them in like that. I like to keep them kind of more on the smaller side rather than how you might find them in a restaurant. You know, in the restaurant, they'll take like chicken breast and they'll cut it like this. I like to have all of my pieces coated pretty evenly. And so if they're already about that size, I'll just throw the chunks of meat in there and just mix this in. I just pretty much took most of the chicken meat that was left off of that chicken. I'm going to add a little bit more water in here. I should have done that first. I should have checked to see, because a lot of times when you let the batter sit, it will thicken up even more. So I should have checked it before I added the chicken. That's alright. It still mixes in okay. Get in here so you can see what I'm doing. That's a pretty good consistency. And some of this will chunk up, you know, will fall apart and flake because it's not raw, it's cooked. This is one of the reasons why you're supposed to do it raw, because it's going to hold together better. But I like having all these little tiny pieces, so you get a lot of this just because the breading is what makes it so good. Getting it good and crispy all the way around. That's my favorite part of almond chicken. That and then of course the gravy over the top. So I'm just going to leave that and let it sit until I'm ready to start frying it up. And I'm going to go check my gravy and see how it's doing, and I'll get back to you in a bit. Got my skillet filled with coconut oil. I'm just doing a test bit of the batter to see if the oil is hot enough. I'm going to do this part on my Nesco hot plate, which is plugged into my solar. So that's why I have this thing sitting here on top of my range. My range hardly ever gets used, this beautiful glass top range, anymore, because in the winter time when I have fires, which I have a fire going now, but I'd rather video this in here because the light is much better. So I can use both right now because I'm getting both good solar power, and I've got the wood stove going hot. But anyway, summertime I do all my cooking, like stovetop type cooking, on my Nesco. I have several of these. hot plates. This time of year I just have one. I'll be pulling out a second one once we get to the point where I'm not having any fires going in the wood stove. We burn fires here about at least 9 months out of the year. And anyway, so now I'm going to start dropping that in there now that it looks good and hot. I'm going to go ahead and turn that down a little bit. It's probably more hot than it needs to be. And I'm only going to cook up a little bit right now just so you can see it, because I got a long time before Mr. Rain's going to be home for dinner. But I wanted to get this video made, so I thought I'd cook up a little bit now just so you can see what it looks like. That's probably plenty to start with. So you're just wanting it to get good and golden brown. And this is another reason why I like using the cooked meat, because I can set the heat pretty high, and so I can make sure the batter gets real brown. It's probably a little bit high. Look at that. It's just a little too dark. Whoops. So there we go. These are some really good colors there. I'll do just a couple more. And then typically what I'll find is I'll have to keep adding some more coconut oil as I go, because I've got a lot more chicken to cook, and that's more than we'll eat. But leftovers, my son will help us out with that. We'll have another meal maybe with the same thing another night. And then also I make, as you can find the video I did on the prepackaged, homemade prepackaged lunches for Mr. Rain right up here, and I'll show you how I package this up for him to take to work. So I like to have plenty on hand for that. This could cook a little bit longer. But yeah, that color right there, that looks really good. That one there, that's a nice good color. Personally, we don't mind them just a little more dark, like these ones here, these first ones I did. Mr. Rain actually would prefer it more like that anyway. I like it that way. I've come to like stuff that way more since he's that way. You just, you know, start to become more alike. But my favorite way is like right there, like that. That color is my very favorite. So you just kind of cook it till you know, you like the color of it. All right, my sauce is pretty well thickened. Now it's not super thick. You can make it thicker if you want, but you gotta understand too, when it cools, it's gonna thicken up a little bit more. So it depends on how hot you're gonna eat it. But I'm gonna go ahead and add my almonds to this now. I'm just serving up a sample plate so you can see how it looks. I'm gonna try to remember to get a picture of, you know, the plate with the rice and the green beans on there. Anyway, you're just gonna take your gravy and you're just gonna pour it right over your chicken. And then it's ready to eat, just like that. So there you have it. That's how I make my almond fried chicken. Again, green onions are excellent on this. So if you remember to get some green onions on hand, you can either sprinkle them over the top so they're more fresh, or you can cook them into your gravy. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.